The data of millions of T-Mobile customers compromised after hackers hit consumer credit firm Experian. I'm Emily Chang, and this is Bloomberg West. Coming up, wireless giant Sprint says it'll cut more than $2 billion in costs over the next 6 months. But is it enough to stop the red ink? And German publisher Axel Springer buys a stake in digital media firm Thrillist as the company spins off Jack Threads. I'll talk to Thrillist CEO Ben Lerer about what's next. And put a ring on it. Apple applies for a patent for a personal computing device you can wear, yes, on your finger. First, though, to our lead. The data of millions of T-Mobile customers, including yours truly, breached. Hackers broke into a database containing T-Mobile's customer information run by the credit tracking firm Experian, including social security numbers and addresses. In a statement to Bloomberg West, T-Mobile CEO John Legere told me, quote, "I'm sorry I wasn't able to come on the show today. My first and most important step was full and prompt communication of the issue and immediate support for anyone potentially impacted. I'm disgusted to see a company like Experian breached and our data impacted. We will be really aggressive on this and work to keep the confidence of our customers. Count on it." Joining me now for more here in the studio, Ryan Wager, Global Threat Defense Strategist at vArmour. And Ryan, thanks so much. So I'm a new T-Mobile customer. I'm pissed. What exactly happened here? How did this happen? How did somebody, A, get into Experian and get to T-Mobile records? Were they targeting T-Mobile?
Well, you can't really be sure that they were targeting it, but the problem is that any digital data is being stored in places that these places can't see. And in this case, you actually had data being stored on another company. And so you had a perimeter that was disposed of between two companies. And you can't really make sure that they were going after T-Mobile data specifically. But when they got inside, they found what they were looking for and they got out.
But, you know, why would it be T-Mobile specifically that's affected? Why couldn't these hackers get data from other companies that Experian is also storing?
I think T-Mobile's just breadth of user base and the amount of information that they were storing about the customers was very unique. They had, millions upon millions of different customers in one location, and it was actually stored in a very small amount of files. They were able to get in, get out, and do it very quickly.
Look, you've told us you're only as secure as your weakest link. Mm-hmm. So, what is the lesson for T-Mobile CEO John Legere here? How much responsibility does T-Mobile bear?
Well, T-Mobile bears responsibility for what they control within their own data centers, and I would be impressed to know that they were all the way up to the speed of technology on their own. But with this case, it's a matter of how much information do you share with your third parties, and then for me, the consumer, do I even know where my data is being stored when I'm doing these transactions, and are the other people that are all having access to it doing everything they can to keep up with the attack?
And what about Experian?
Experian just needs to take a hard look. I mean, a lot of these companies are
Experian, by the way, has been hacked before, but this was different, right?
They've been hacked, but more in like a social aspect. I think they were tricked into selling some data before, but in this case, this was actually a breach. And so this was a targeted breach where they found the weakest link. They may have started at T-Mobile and worked their way down like a hacker would, found the weakest link, and in this case, it was another business that had access to the location.
Interesting. So what about me? What about customers? What can I do? Or to a certain extent, are we just vulnerable to the businesses and the companies and the wireless carriers that we choose to use?
Well, interesting enough, I know Experian, one of the things they offered was 2 free years of credit identification protection out of this. But I think that we just need to be aware of the fact that when you're putting this data out there, that you need to make sure that you're keeping track of where it's at and when it's at, and then if you need to make changes to it.
But how can I know that?
You ultimately have to trust as a consumer in the businesses that you're handing it, but you can take these steps to be monitoring your own credit history, and if you see types of things, there are services that you can employ, and take them very seriously, because this kind of stuff, once it gets out there, it's hard to erase.
All right, Ryan Wager of vArmour, thanks so much for joining us. Well, another wireless name with issues today, Sprint, the 4th largest U.S. carrier, saying it's planning to cut $2.5 billion in costs and eliminate more jobs over the next 6 months. Sprint is struggling to return to profitability, but its corporate parent SoftBank is standing by the company. SoftBank recently boosted its purchase of Sprint shares. In August, SoftBank CEO Masayoshi Son reiterated his support.
You may think I am being overly optimistic about Sprint, as there's no concrete progress I can show you at this point. but I have exactly the same positive feeling as I had when we turned around the business with Yahoo Broadband. I strongly believe I made the right decision to buy Sprint, and I have absolutely no intention to sell it.
This is Sprint's second round of cuts in just under a year. Last November, the company said it would trim about 2,000 jobs in a bid to save $1.5 billion. Well, if you've used your credit card since yesterday, you probably noticed that swiping is no longer a thing. As of today, all U.S. retailers now must be equipped with a microchip reader to process payments. The EMV chip is supposed to be more secure than magnetic strips because it generates new authentication codes with every transaction, making it harder for hackers. Joining me now, Richey, Chief Enterprise Risk Officer for Visa. And obviously, you guys have been going through this change as well. I've gotten new credit cards. You know, I lived in Europe almost 10 years ago now and was using chip and PIN back then. So it's taken the U.S. a really long time to catch up. Do you have a number on the amount of fraud this will reduce by doing this now in the United States?
Well, let me start with a number that I'm very proud of. In the Visa system, we now have over 150 million chip cards in circulation in the U.S., so big progress since last year when we only had 20 million. Now, the reduction of fraud is going to take a while because it's actually not required for the retailer to implement the chip technology immediately.
What's the deadline? When do they have to do it?
There's no
by?
mandate.
Oh.
What it is an incentive. So our incentives took place yesterday. Many retailers are ready. We have 314,000 terminals up and running, but there's a lot more to go. So in 2 to 3 years, you should start seeing about 60-70% of those transactions, no more swipe, like you said, and then you could see about a 60 to 70% reduction in counterfeit fraud.
So in the last 24 hours, what have you been hearing from merchants? You know, I know our producer said, I went to Walgreens, I didn't even know how to pay. It was so confusing.
Well, it shouldn't be confusing. You can try swiping as usual. The terminal will tell you if it's equipped, and then you just dip your card. Instead of swiping along the side, you insert it along the bottom, simple as that.
And this is going to reduce in-store fraud only, right?
That's
okay,
right.
So with commerce moving online, mobile payments, what's next?
Cool stuff. What's next is something called tokenization. We replace the account number with a similar number, but it's not usable for a payment. So what happens is, if it's stolen, that is. We already have this in some Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, Google, Android Pay. We're using tokens so that if they're used with anything other than your device, they're no good, they don't work.
So how long is it going to take for every retailer to use that technology?
It's going to take a while.
Like a decade?
It's going to take a while.
Like, I mean, what are we talking about
The interesting thing is the retailer doesn't have to do anything. We have to do it with the banks and the technology companies. So no more burden on the retailer, and it should happen within, I would say, 3 to 5 years.
Okay. All right. Well, that's good to hear. Richey of Visa, thank you so much for joining us today on Bloomberg West.
Thank you.
Coming up, Thrillist CEO Ben Lerer joins us to discuss why he decided to restructure the company and split off his e-commerce site. Plus, Apple's next big product could, in fact, be tiny, a smart ring. Details on the patent filing next. Welcome back to Bloomberg West. Well, it is now official. Google has reorganized itself into a giant holding company called Alphabet. Google's search engine, along with Android and YouTube, will become wholly owned subsidiaries of Alphabet. Other business units will eventually be set up under Alphabet, including Nest and the research lab Google X. Now, to the German media giant Axel Springer continuing its shopping spree in the U.S. digital media business. On Tuesday, Axel Springer announced a deal to pay $343 million for control of Business Insider. A day later, they took a minority stake in Thrillist, the men's lifestyle digital media company. The investment, part of a broader $54 million funding round, along with some other investors. At the same time, Thrillist also announced plans to spin off its men's e-commerce brand, JackThreads, into a separate company. Joining me now from New York, Thrillist CEO Ben Lerer. Ben, thanks so much for joining us. Always great to have you here on the show. I know this was a process for you. You were looking to potentially sell the company or take on a big investment, and in that process, you decided to split the company in two. Talk to me about that process and the sort of aha moment where you decided this was the best way forward.
Yeah, it was a bit of a process, and I think when we got started, the impetus was that we knew we had a bunch of priorities we wanted to invest in as time went on, and we wanted capital. I don't think we were looking to sell, but we were definitely looking to do some restructuring. And I think as time went on, what was clear was that there were different pools of investors who were very natural partners for each of the two businesses. On the media side, there were people like Axel who had real expertise in what we were trying to do and who we felt really understood sort of the business that we were trying to build. On the same token, there were other investors in the commerce side that really understood what we were doing there. And ultimately, the more time we spent with these various different financial partners, the more we realized that even the ones who were willing and excited to potentially invest in both businesses turned out to be biased in one way or the other. And ultimately, we just said, you know what, let's take money from different partners. The businesses have already been operating independently of one another, and we're really happy we did, and we're very pleased with the outcome.
So what's your proclaimed end game here? Is there a particular media business out there that you admire, that you would like to compete with or overtake? And what about the same in e-commerce? Like, who do you view as the competition? Yeah,
that's a great question. I think on the media side, I think media is changing really rapidly, and so to identify one brand that we look up to is tough. I think, there are brands like BuzzFeed and Vox and Business Insider who have reached levels of scale that we obviously strive for. There are also traditional brands like the GQs or Esquires of the world that have built brands that have incredible gravitas and have lasted a really long time. And so I think there's sort of things that traditional businesses do really well that we aspire to. There's also things that some of the big digital guys have done that we're also a little jealous of. And so we have sort of we have a bunch of plans to go and grow there. And on the commerce side, we think there's a massive hole in men's fashion for guys. And generally speaking, women's fashion gets a lot more attention in most of the big brands that exist. Gap or J. Crew or Urban Outfitters, or lots of the brands that, at least in the U.S. market, are the most popular for people like me and my friends and the employees of our companies and people like that. And I believe that there is a big opportunity to focus directly on men and to build a new fashion brand that has the sort of the heart of a magazine and the IQ of a tech company, and that uses the internet and data to build a fashion brand that in some ways is actually going to feel it's going to be old school, and that it's going to be about creating really beautiful products that people love to wear and feel really proud to own.
So as you say, the media business is changing quickly. You're seeing a lot of deals get done for whatever reason. Do you see a future where content and commerce can really work together? Because that vision really hasn't come to fruition yet. Yeah, I mean, content and commerce, I think for us, we believe that the way that we approached it has had a really great result. When we acquired JackThreads, it was a 6 or 7 person company doing $1 million of revenue. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we've built it up to a significant scale to the point that it's graduated. It now has its own mission and its own soul and its own KPIs and needs its own capital. And so I believe that we've been successful in merging content and commerce, but it hasn't played out exactly as we might have thought it did in the first place. When we started Thrillist, we never thought about commerce at all. And as time goes on, I still believe that there is a fundamental difference in digital media than there is in a lot of the traditional mediums. So whether you're talking about TV or radio or print or outdoor, the distance between consuming content in those environments and actually making a purchase is pretty vast. And digitally, you can consume content and you can buy almost seamlessly. And so I am a huge believer in brands finding ways to use content to sell products, or retailers using content to engage. And it worked for us, although as time went on, we built 2 businesses that were quite different. And JackThreads as a fashion brand really, I think it could easily be successfully owned by a media company, but I think it can also succeed on its own. So that's an interesting point. Where do you see both of these businesses in the next 5 years? Do you see looking to sell them separately? Do you see moving towards an IPO?
I'm actually not sure, and I'm frankly a little bit happy for a minute to not think about it. You know, after a fundraise, you're sort of in the trenches for a while in deal mode, and we have so much stuff that we're working on right now. Just yesterday, we launched what we're sort of calling JT 2.0 at Jack Threads, where we introduced our first namesake line. We actually introduced a line of clothing that I am wearing head to toe, which is Jack Threads branded, which we're incredibly excited about and have huge plans for. And on the Thrillist side, we're in rapid growth mode, hiring lots of editors and content creators across a bunch of different social platforms and formats. And I'm sort of excited just to put my head down and execute for a little while. Long term, I believe there's plenty of headroom in both of the businesses to grow for the foreseeable future, and fortunately we're capitalized now to be able to be a little bit more aggressive in how we think about growth, and hopefully we'll build something where we can have two standalone businesses that don't require more capital or don't require public market capital for a really long time, but who knows.
All right. Well, Ben, we like the outfit, and for the sake of my husband, I hope you do figure out the men's fashion thing.
Thank you.
Thrillist CEO Ben Lerer. As always, Ben, thanks so much for joining us on the show. Now, turning to Apple. If you like it, perhaps someday you could put an Apple ring on it. That was a good one, guys. Apple filed a patent application for a ring computing device back in April 2014, which the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office just published this week. The patent describes a ring with a touchscreen, computer processor, wireless transceiver, and I can't stop laughing, that was so good, and rechargeable power source. It also has a microphone for dictating commands and could also vibrate with a sort of haptic feedback on the Apple Watch. Now, keep in mind that this is only a patent application, no guarantee that an iRing is in the works. Coming up, what is up with those new GE commercials? You know, the ones that are actually funny.
Surprise! I heard you got a job as a developer.
It's official. I work for GE.
What?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
New Chief Marketing Officer Linda Boff joins us on GE's rebranding next.
You know, hospitals can work better. This is,
I was trying to put it away.
got it on the key.
So you're going to work on a train?
In today's version of Out of This World, the Ridley Scott film The Martian opens in theaters this weekend. The movie stars Matt Damon as an American astronaut stranded on the Red Planet. But the $108 million movie has humble origins. It's based on the writing of computer programmer Andy Weir. Weir dreamed up the story in a series of well-researched blog posts, which turned into an ebook and sold 35,000 copies in 4 months. The book deal and movie deal closed in the same week. The film is projected to pull in $45 million this weekend. All of this in the context of the actual Mars breakthrough earlier this week, when NASA unveiled findings of liquid water on the planet. But when it comes to bringing science fiction closer to reality, NASA is still far off. It's aiming to send humans to Mars by the 2030s. Well, when you think of General Electric, you tend to think of jet engines and electrical turbines, big industry. Well, GE wants to shift that image and rebrand as what it's calling a digital industrial. Here's how.
So what's your news?
I got a job. I'll be programming at GE.
Oh, I got a job too.
Zazzies. The app where you put fruit hats on animals? I love that.
Guys, I'll be writing code that helps machines communicate.
I just zazzied you.
Look at it. Joining me now from New York, the newly named Chief Marketing Officer for GE, Linda Boff, who's played a key role in pushing the company into digital marketing and content creation over the last 12 years. Linda, thank you so much for joining us. So we noticed your campaign, we saw the commercials, we laughed out loud, and people rarely even see commercials at all anymore. So we found you as the person behind them. What is your thinking here? What is the strategy behind this new ad campaign?
Yeah, thanks, Emily. Thanks so much for having me on and for highlighting this. So as you said, GE is becoming a digital industrial company. We're merging software and machines and really creating a new category. And what we tried to do with these ads was, as you say, very much talk to future employee, a developer, and a developer who would not just be interested in programming and in code, but in making a difference. And we just had a little bit of fun with it. So as you saw, we made some fun of tongue-in-cheek other types of apps. And I think you're showing one right now.
Yes, we are indeed. Linda, look, GE makes heavy-duty machinery. What does the digital in the digital industrial term refer to?
Sure. Emily, it's all about creating a layer of data and analytics so that we can not just have the machines, but actually be able to provide our customers, our rail customers, our energy customers, our hospitals with insight so that they can run more efficiently, so that trains can operate more efficiently, so that we can save companies money, so that we can predict outcomes. So we've built a whole software division and launched what we call GE Digital, a division that's focused on how to enable our machines with digital knowledge. And we've actually built an industrial cloud called Predix, a platform that our customers and everybody in the industry can use. So that's a big part of the transition you're seeing.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that the ads are geared towards future employees, because it also feels like they're geared towards consumers, which if GE is selling to airlines and oil companies, then why create an ad campaign that also, reaches consumers?
GE is a brand that's been around for 130 years. It's a brand that's the 6th most valuable brand in the world, worth about $46 billion. And we impact a lot of audiences. Investors, consumers, customers. So it's very important to us to get the message out broadly. We feel as though there are folks coming out of school who we would love to have consider a job at GE. We'd love to have them think about GE as a place of future employment. But equally important are our customers and our investors. So it's a broad message.
It's interesting. It's a war for talent in Silicon Valley. Do you really think you can compete for Silicon Valley tech talent? And what is the sell? Quickly,
I will tell you, and we just published this week coming out of our Big Minds and Machines conference, the industrial app economy is going to be 2x that of the consumer app economy. So I think we've got quite a value proposition for the future development talent in this country.
All right. Interesting. Linda Boff, GE CMO, thanks so much for joining us today on Bloomberg West. It's great to have you. And that does it for this edition of Bloomberg West. Have a wonderful weekend. And by the way, on Monday, we will relaunch in a new time slot, 2:30 p.m. Pacific, 5:30 p.m. Eastern, and of course, streaming as well.